Welcome to Prediction Strike weekly buy tiers. I'm sure we'll find a better way to realistically name this, but Jackson, Grant, and myself are going to walk you through some of our favorite fantasy football buys ahead of this weekend. We're going to try to tier them in different categories, but yeah, hope you enjoy it, and we will see how this goes. So walking through it, bada bing, bada boom, Mr. Worldwide, we walk in the room into the first spot, the guys that we think are absolute smashes, the guys that are tier A for us, the guys that we're really willing to die for here. So in the running back spot, I think I put Jordan Mason twice on here, so I'm a genius already right out the gate because I think I put him in tier A and tier B for me. Because it all depends on your personal view of him. Jahmyr Gibbs for Grant here. I'll let him and Jackson speak their truth on their two guys here.
Yeah, I like Jahmyr this week against the Cardinals. It feels like a game that's going to have a ton of scoring and potentially somewhat of a passing game script. I think it's going to be pretty high paced. So I like Jahmyr to fit in that offense better than a David Montgomery this weekend. I do think he scores. I think he catches a good amount of passes, and this feels like a huge boom spot against a defense that hasn't necessarily looked great. They looked fine last week against a struggling Rams offense. But outside of that, I mean, they gave up a ton of points to the Bills. James Cook had a good week, and I think Jahmyr is just more talented than any back they faced so far. So
you're giving them a boom over a doom?
Yeah.
A huge boom for Jahmyr Gibbs. And we're also giving a boom to Devon A-Chain, going back to the proverbial well with this one. I just feel like the Seahawks matchup is a great one for him. They struggle against the rush. Skylar Thompson, I mean, they're going to get points somewhere. Skylar Thompson is not the biggest pass threat ever. Raheem Mostert's a bit banged up. Jeff Wilson didn't practice. A-Chain should be getting pretty high relative usage, so I don't see why he doesn't continue as the workhorse for Miami this week against the Seahawks.
I also think the passing plays they do draw up are going to be a lot of like dump offs and quick little like motion reads that 100%. A-Chain's perfect for. I think he might have like 10 targets this week. So
yeah, check down city for sure.
Yeah,
I agree. I should have put Jonathan Taylor here, so I might ask you to put that in the edits, but oh well, we'll move on. All right. Receivers, the elites of the elites. Who are the guys we're willing to stand by? So really, the guys that went super early rounds. I like Sedarian a lot this week. Just projects really well. I don't see why not. And what's supposed to be a really high-scoring game environment against the Baltimore Ravens. Jackson, Grant, what are we expecting between Marv and Jamar Chase?
I like Marv this week. I mean, obviously coming off of a big week is kind of a weird spot where you could potentially sell high or something. But I think last week is going to be more of the norm. I mean, I don't think he's going to have like 60-yard touchdowns every week, but this Lions secondary has not looked great to start the season. They've been giving up points left and right. Chris Godwin had a big game, and then week one, they gave up a fair amount of points to receivers as well. So this just feels like a spot where a super talented wide receiver can feast against a secondary that struggled and is super young. Terry and Arnold questionable coming into the week, but obviously a rookie as well. So I think a rookie versus rookie matchup here, I think you take Marv.
Yeah, with Chase, I just think this Commanders matchup is a pretty obvious get-right spot for both Chase and just the Bengals passing attack in general. The Commanders have some of the worst grade secondaries so far through the season. They've also allowed 3 different wideouts to get top 12 finishes in fantasy. So I'm going with Jamar Chase to have his get-right game here.
100%. Love that. All right, on to the next tier, the elite tight ends. I'm going with Trey McBride. I just don't think there's a tight end that realistically projects better. I probably should have put George Kittle here. Oh, well. But Trey McBride, really, really big fan of him this week in this matchup. I expect him to finally find himself in the red zone. What about you guys with Brocky Poo and Kyle Pitts?
Yeah, the Panthers' defense has looked awful to start the season. I just think in general their linebacker core is not anything to be feared. I think Brock's going to find a lot of space open in the middle of the field, and a lot of those medium routes are going to be wide open, and this feels like a spot where he continues the hot start he's had, and I think he'll rise over that projection.
Yeah, I'm going with Pitts this week just because I think we're getting him at a good buy spot, whatever market you're really looking at, just because of his week 2 performance. He's going up against a Chiefs squad that let Mike Gesicki cook them up last week. And, you know, this projection Pitts has right now is under what Gesicki was able to do against them. I'm not convinced at all, really, by Drake London or Mooney or Ray or any of those other options for Kirk out there so far. So I don't see why this isn't a Pitts game.
Right on. All right, moving into the next tier. So the guys that we're willing to stake a stand on this week that are kind of the middle of the pack or haven't been performing as well as of recent, but we know they're still really good players. receivers. So for the running back position, I went with Jordan Mason again like an idiot, but so be it. All right, Cam Akers for Grant here and Zach Charbonnet for Jackson. Defend yourselves.
I think Cam Akers is going to get a lot of hype going into this week. I mean, we've seen Dameon Pierce not practice yet. We've seen Joe Mixon not practice yet. I think Cam Akers is going to be the lead back this weekend. And I think in general, this Houston Texans rushing attack has looked better than I think a lot of people thought. It's been more of a focus in their game plan than I think we anticipated. I think we thought it was kind of going to be like a air raid, 3 great receivers, a lot of stuff like that. And I think Akers should be able to be effective on the ground this week. And I think, especially given his prediction strike projection, it's a great buy spot. I also think he's a guy that you could consider as a flex in all formats in fantasy as well. So high on the week for Cam Akers for sure.
Yeah, I'm going Zach Charbonnet with a projection of around 13 fantasy points here. He dropped around 19, I think, last game with K9 out with that oblique injury. He's going to be dealing with that same oblique injury heading into week 3, and Zach should see that exact same amount of usage, if not more. Dolphins got cooked by James Cook without Teron Armstead, and we're missing him again this week. So I like this spot for Charbonnet a lot. I love him as a player, just from a talent profile. I like him to cook.
Right on. All right. Moving on to the next spot, we have receivers. So I'm going to start off with Stephon Diggs here. I had a whole variety of them that I really liked, but I decided to land on Stephon Diggs. The reason I decided to land on this position is that this defense is good. It's underrated by Brian Flores a lot. You had Brock Purdy quite literally go, your defense is great. But the thing that I like the most here is this is his first game back since he got traded from Minnesota. So I think they're going to have a few plays schemed up for him, and I like the kind of narrative that we should be getting here, expecting a big game out of Stephon Diggs. All right, Ridley, Chris Olave, what should we be expecting from them and their respective matchups here?
Yeah, Ridley. I just feel like the Packers secondary has given up a lot of big plays so far this season. We saw, especially in week 1, we saw AJ Brown come through with a 60-yard touchdown. Their secondary has been improved from last year, but I still don't think it's great. And the deep threat that I'm targeting in that offense is certainly Calvin Ridley. So I like the spot for some big plays. I think the Titans probably won't have a ton of success offensively. I don't think it's going to be a great game for Will Levis, but it feels like a spot where they can make him pay with at least one big play that gets you a bunch of fantasy points from Calvin Ridley.
Right on.
Yeah, this Chris Olave matchup just seems like a pretty easy choice for me. And I think it's a good spot to keep faith in Olave. Like, we've seen him combine for, I think, only 16 fantasy points through the first 2 games. Has not looked good. And we've seen Rashid Shaheed kind of take the main or wide receiver 1 role so far. I don't think that's going to sustain itself. I think people are putting too much faith on the Shaheed side of things. I think this is another get-right spot for Olave here, going up against the Eagles, who have allowed the most fantasy points to receivers so far this season. There's a 50-point total in this game, so someone's going to pop off. So I like Olave here.
100%. On to the next tier. All right. So we've got some medium tier tight ends. I'll start off with Dallas Goedert here. I'm just taking a chance that he gets a little bit more involved this week. I highly doubt that Britton Covey is going to be getting that many targets every single week. So I'd imagine they probably go a little bit more towards Goddard, but ultimately only time will tell with that one. Freiermuth, Parkinson, what should we be expecting out of these two?
I just like the matchup here. The Chargers running backs are pretty banged up. You saw Brock Bowers have good success against them in week 1, and it just feels like a spot where Freiermuth is going to catch a lot of underneath routes and kind of stack up some points. He seems to be potentially their primary possession threat on the offense. Pickens is obviously the guy that's making more of the deep plays and kind of burning the defense deep, but I feel like Freiermuth is going to catch a lot of intermediate routes here and rack up some points for sure.
Yeah, I'm going with Colby Parkinson, pretty much just some 1 + 2 = 3 math here. You got Cooper Kupp out, you've got Puka Nacua out, you've got them going up against the 49ers, who have allowed the 4th most receptions to tight ends so far in the season. With a projection of 7 fantasy points, I think Colby could get a lot of targets, see a fantasy score closer to 11 or 12 by the end of this game.
100%. All right. And on to the next one. So what are the plays that we know about that nobody else is willing to take a stand on this week? So who are the weird guys? All right. So for me this week, it is Zamir White. I was surprised Grant didn't take this one when we were asking, but the reason I like Zamir is you get a really, really bad Carolina Panthers run defense. And you get the coach this whole entire week being like, look, we want to get Zamir White 20 touches a game. And I thought it was very interesting on one of the more recent quotes I posted of him just being like, I want the game to go like those last two snaps with Zamir White. So if that's the case, and he wants a whole game like that, I can't see a better game environment than this. So I'm all aboard the Zamir White train this weekend. Khalil Herbert, Jerome Ford, what should we be expecting from them this weekend?
I think this is supposed to be Jaleel McLaughlin, but it's fine. I can add the screenshot in later. But I like the matchup here a lot. The Buccaneers' two starting defensive tackles have both been limited all week in practice. Vita Vea likely out, who's a monster against the run. And same with Kalijah Cansey, who was a rookie last year, who is looking to build on some success. But they were both very limited in practice. We'll obviously learn more as the week goes on. But I think it's a great spot for Broncos running backs to have a little bit of a bounce back. I do think the Buccaneers should probably cruise in the game. So the second half game script might not be ideal, but Jaleel's projection isn't crazy. So I like him to have a good shot to soar over that projection.
Right on.
Yeah, I decided to include Jerome Ford in like the stance section just because it seems like people might be more tentative now that Deontay Foreman got some run share in week 2. But we've got a healthy, or what seems like it's going to be a fully healthy Browns O-line going up against a Giants team that's horrible against the rush. And it's been 2 games. Like we saw Ford take the run share in game 1, and then we saw Foreman take over 14. He had like 14 carries, I think, in week 2, but it's like that didn't work at all. They're switching up schemes because they're without their main running back, Nick Chubb, right now. Like I am not convinced they're going to go back to that committee because I think like averaging around 7 yards per carry, Jerome Ford obviously looks a lot better even when he did split snaps with Deontay Foreman. So I think that I'm honestly going to put my faith in that being a 1-game experiment, and I think Jerome Ford could cruise to a huge week here against the Giants.
All right, on to the next one here. We've got Jordan Whittington for me. I just think he takes over the Cooper Kupp role and becomes super relevant in this offense, and they're going to need somebody to turn to. I think they've done this before with rookies. I wouldn't be surprised again. But explain Josh Reynolds and Deontay Johnson.
Yeah, Josh Reynolds has just been getting a ton of targets, and I don't think Bo Nix could really play worse than he has so far to start the season. So it's kind of just a buy low spot on the offense in general. And just like I said with the defensive tackles for the Buccaneers, a lot of their corners are limited in practice and didn't play last week. So I like the spot for Josh Reynolds. The Buccaneers gave up a ton of fantasy points last week to wide receivers. J-Mo had a big game and Amon-Ra had a big game. So I just like the trend to continue there, and I'm buying low on an offense that hasn't been great.
Yeah, Deontay Johnson only has 5 receptions to the first 2 games for around 50 yards. But I mean, we all know we can pretty much chalk all of that up to horrible QB play. And we have Andy Dalton, who is coming in and is at least a much more competent passing quarterback than was Bryce Young. Going up against a kind of shoddy Raiders secondary, I think we could see a startable week here for Deontay. Some connections between those two.
Shoddy Raiders secondary, you say? Highest graded PFF secondary in the league.
Okay, yeah, you're right. They are good.
We also haven't played any wide receivers that are capable of running a route, so we'll learn a lot. But I think it's a good spot, buy low.
You do think, you like Deontay against your Raiders?
I think it's a great spot, regardless of if you think the secondary is good or not. Yeah, I think you should get a ton of targets. I think they're going to force him the ball.
Andy Dalton threw the ball 58
times. They went out to try to get him.
Yeah,
they went out to try to get him in the offseason for a reason. I think with a quarterback that's more capable of handling himself under pressure and stuff, I feel like it's going to be a much better spot for Deontay. So I like the pick for sure.
We will see how it plays out this weekend. Otherwise, all my Deontay Johnson bags are absolutely crashed. But moving forward, all right, on to the tight ends. I'm going with King Greg Dulcich, tight end 11 in usage this past week, just dropped a few balls. I imagine he's still going to get there. It's between him and Jaleel for the Joker role. So I'm just taking my shot that the receiving tight end, who was a decent prospect coming out of college, is going to be decent. But only time will tell here. Not the best matchup, I will not lie. Cole Kmet, Cade Otton, what are we expecting from these two?
Yeah, the Colts defense just hasn't been good, and I'm anticipating one of the 2 wide receivers to be out for the Bears. Kmet has had very low production to start the year, but I feel like this is a spot where he can find himself in the end zone. I think this is a get right spot for the Bears offense in general. I think Caleb plays a better game, and the Colts are going to give up a fair amount of points in this one. So I trust Cole Kmet here.
Yeah. Cade Otton, this is the idea is literally just from a coach speak clip that Wells pulled out of the Buccaneers interview room. Basically, Buccaneers coach, displaying his faith in Cade Otton, says there's big things coming for him. I think, this is as good a week as any for that to happen. He's only projected 0.35 fantasy points, above the repricing threshold, and he's going up against the Denver Broncos. Rashad is banged up, so some of that close to the line passing options might not be there for Baker. He might resort to Cade Otton more than normal. So,
like it,
love it. All right. Well, with that being said, I think that's all we have for you on this one. Appreciate all the likes, the follows, and subscriptions, of course. Help us get to 1,000 followers. We're almost there. I think we're about 100 and some odd away from that, probably 150-ish, 160-ish. Yeah, that'd be awesome if you could help us get us there. But until next time, let us know your favorite investment picks on PredictionStrike. Hope you all have a great day. Peace, y'all.
See ya.